Hey viewers, welcome to African Tales by Affy. Please kindly click the subscribe button to get notified for more amazing stories. In the quiet village of Odiu, where the morning mist kissed the tops of tall palm trees and the rivers sang gentle melodies, a child was born to Mr. and Mrs. Ease. The couple had long prayed for a son, for after 7 daughters, Mr. Ease longed for a boy to carry on his name. When the midwife delivered the baby, however, she gasped and stepped back, her face pale with shock. The newborn child, Onyinye, had the features of both a boy and a girl. Mrs. Ease, weak from childbirth, reached out for her baby, but the midwife hesitated. "What is it? Why do you look afraid?" The midwife glanced at Mr. Ease, who had been pacing anxiously. Finally, she whispered, "Your child is neither fully a boy nor a girl." Silence fell upon the hut. Mr. Ease's eyes darkened. "What do you mean?" The midwife carefully handed the baby to Mrs. Ease, who held the tiny bundle close. The child cooed softly, innocent of the turmoil it had just caused. "This is an abomination," Mr. Ease muttered. Mrs. Ease's heart clenched. "No! Onyinye is our child, our gift from the gods." Mr. Ease turned away, running a hand over his bald head. He knew that in a village as small and superstitious as Odiu, this was dangerous. If the people discovered their child's condition, they would say it was a curse. They might even demand the child be abandoned or worse, cast out of the village. "No one must know," he said finally. He turned to the midwife, his voice firm. "Swear on the gods you will not speak a word of this to anyone." The midwife hesitated but saw the desperation in his eyes. She nodded. "I swear." Thus, Onyinye's secret was sealed. From that day forward, Mr. and Mrs. Ease raised Onyinye as a boy. They dressed her in clothes meant for warriors, taught her to climb trees, and insisted she never show weakness. "You must always be strong," Mr. Ease would say. "A man does not cry." But as Onyinye grew older, something felt wrong. She loved to play with her sisters, weaving flower crowns and singing songs by the river. She admired their brightly colored wrappers and the graceful way they carried themselves. She longed to be like them. One day, as she played near the stream, her eldest sister, Nkem, found her twirling in a scarf. "Onyinye, what are you doing?" Nkem asked, giggling. Onyinye froze. "Nothing." She quickly pulled off the scarf. Nkem tilted her head. "Do you ever wish you were like us?" Onyinye hesitated. "Sometimes." Nkem smiled. "Then maybe you are." Before Onyinye could ask what she meant, their father's voice rang through the trees. "Onyinye, come here." Heart-pounding, Onyinye ran home. One evening, as Onyinye helped her mother pound yam, Mr. Ease sat outside, watching. His sharp eyes had noticed how Onyinye's features were becoming more delicate, how she moved with an unnatural grace for a boy. He exhaled. It was time. Later that night, he called his wife into their room. "She cannot stay here," he said. "Soon, people will start asking questions. They will see what we've been hiding." Mrs. Ease's eyes filled with tears. "She is our child." We cannot just send her away. She will be safer away from Odu, he said firmly. My sister, Auntie Alma, lives in Okeen. She will raise Anyinai as a girl. She will teach her how to live without fear. Mrs. Ease clutched her wrapper. And what will we tell the village? That our son has gone to train as a warrior. The decision was made. The next morning, Anyinai was woken before sunrise. Her mother dressed her in fine clothes, her eyes full of sadness. Be strong, my child, she whispered. But why must I go? Anyinai asked. Did I do something wrong? Mrs. Ease pulled her into a tight embrace. No, my love. You are special, and special things must be protected. A few hours later, Anyinai was placed in a canoe that would take her down the river to Okeen. As she looked back at Odu, her heart ached. She didn't understand why she had to leave, but deep inside, she knew life was about to change forever. As the village disappeared in the distance, she whispered, "Who am I really?" Little did she know, the journey ahead would reveal the answer. The journey to Okeen was long, and as Anyinai sat in the canoe, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Her heart was heavy with the uncertainty of her future. She had no idea what awaited her in the distant town where she would live with Auntie Alma, her mother's sister. The canoe bobbed gently in the river, and the cool breeze kissed her face. She looked down at her hands, which had always been strong and capable, hands that had helped her father in the fields, hands that had helped her mother prepare meals, and hands that had never known the softness of what it meant to be a girl. As the boat reached the shores of Okeen, Anyinai's heart fluttered. The village was larger than Odu, bustling with life. The air smelled different, fresher, and the people moved with purpose, their voices a hum of activity in the background. A woman, who appeared to be in her mid-40s, stood by the water's edge, watching them approach. This was Auntie Alma, her mother's sister. She was taller than Anyinai's mother, with a stern yet warm face that made people feel safe and welcome. As soon as the boat landed, Auntie Alma rushed forward and embraced Anyinai. "My dear child," Auntie Alma exclaimed, her voice thick with emotion. "I've been waiting for you. Welcome to Okeen." Anyinai hesitated at first, but then returned the hug. Auntie Alma's warmth made her feel slightly at ease, even though she knew nothing of what was to come. After the brief embrace, Auntie Alma stepped back, looking Anyinai up and down. "You've grown, my dear. And you've changed, I see." She smiled warmly. "Don't worry, I'll make sure you're well taken care of." They walked back to Auntie Alma's home, which was a simple but cozy house with thatched roofs and large windows that let the sunlight flood the rooms. The village of Okeen was peaceful, surrounded by lush greenery and towering trees that stretched high into the sky. As they walked, Auntie Alma told Anyinai about the village, how it was a place of refuge for people who needed a fresh start. When they arrived at Auntie Alma's house, Anyinai felt a mix of emotions. There was a part of her that wanted to run back to Odu, where everything was familiar, despite the secrets she had to carry. But she knew she couldn't return. Her father's words echoed in her mind, "You must go and be safe." Auntie Alma showed her to a small room at the back of the house. It was simple, with a bed made of straw mats and a small wooden table. "This is your space," Auntie Alma said. "You'll be comfortable here. I'll teach you everything you need to know to live here as a young woman." Onyinye nodded silently, feeling overwhelmed. Auntie Alma left the room, closing the door gently behind her. Sitting on the bed, Onyinye gazed out the window at the vast village before her. "How long will it take to forget the life I had in ODU?" she wondered. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning of her journey. The days in Okene passed slowly at first. Auntie Alma wasted no time in teaching Onyinye the ways of a woman. She instructed her in the art of cooking, sewing, and walking with grace. "A woman must always carry herself with dignity," Auntie Alma would say as she guided Onyinye through the steps of wearing the long wrappers that women of Okene were known for. Despite her discomfort, Onyinye followed her aunt's instructions. She learned to carry pots of water from the well on her head without spilling a drop. She learned to braid her hair, even though she couldn't understand why her hair needed to be braided at all. Onyinye could feel herself changing, but her inner struggle was constant. One evening, as Onyinye prepared dinner with Auntie Alma, she asked, "Why do I have to live as a girl, Auntie? Why couldn't I stay in ODU and be myself?" Auntie Alma paused, turning to face her with a gentle but serious look. "My dear, there's much more to being a woman than just dressing up. It's about your heart and your spirit. It's about embracing who you are without fear of others. But more importantly, you must protect yourself. The world isn't always kind to those who don't fit into what people expect." Onyinye looked down at her hands. "But I don't know if I can fit into that world." Auntie Alma smiled softly, reaching over to pat Onyinye's hand. "You don't have to fit into anyone's world but your own. Be who you are, and the world will have to accept you." That night, Onyinye lay awake in her bed, thinking about Auntie Alma's words. Could she truly be herself? Or would she always have to hide the truth about who she was? The next day, something happened that would change everything. A month after Onyinye's arrival in Okene, a young man named Abi came to Auntie Alma's house to ask for help with some business dealings. Abi was tall and handsome, with dark, intense eyes that seemed to look straight through you. He owned a small shop in the village where he sold goods, and Auntie Alma had agreed to help him navigate some legal paperwork. When Abi walked into the house, his eyes met Onyinye's. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. He smiled politely, but there was something in the way he looked at her that made her heart race. She quickly turned away, her cheeks flushed. "Good day, Auntie Alma," Abi said, bowing his head. "Ah, Abi," Auntie Alma said cheerfully. Come in. I'm sure you've come to talk business, but I must introduce you to my niece. This is Onyinye." Abi glanced at Onyinye again, his gaze lingering a moment longer than necessary. He extended his hand with a warm smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Onyinye." Onyinye hesitated for a moment before shaking his hand. There was something kind in his eyes, but also a curious intensity that unsettled her. As Abi and Auntie Alma discussed the paperwork, Onyinye couldn't help but steal glances at him. He seemed confident and well-spoken, yet there was an air of mystery about him. That night, as she lay in bed, Onion Eye couldn't stop thinking about Abby. Could I trust him? Could he ever accept me for who I am? The next day, Abby returned to Auntie Alma's house. This time, he came with a purpose. He didn't just talk business. He spoke to Onion Eye, asking about her life, her dreams, and her experiences in Okeen. His questions were gentle, his voice sincere. "Do you ever wish you could go back to ODU?" Abby asked one evening after Auntie Alma had gone to bed. "It must be hard to leave everything behind." Onion Eye hesitated. "Sometimes, but it feels like there's no place for me there anymore." Abby nodded thoughtfully. "Well, if you ever need a friend, I'll be here. You seem like someone with a lot of courage, Onion Eye." Onion Eye felt a strange warmth at his words. Perhaps, just perhaps, she might be able to find a place where she belonged. In the weeks that followed, Abby continued to visit Auntie Alma's house, usually under the guise of needing help with business. But each time, his visits became more frequent and his conversations with Onion Eye longer. He was persistent, and though she tried to keep her distance, Onion Eye couldn't help but feel a connection growing between them. There was something about Abby that made her feel understood, something in the way he listened to her that made her want to open up to him. One afternoon, after the sun had dipped low in the sky and the village was bathed in a golden hue, Abby came by with a basket of fresh fruit. He greeted Auntie Alma with a warm smile before turning his attention to Onion Eye, who was sitting under the shade of a large mango tree, lost in thought. "Good evening, Onion Eye," Abby said, his voice calm and inviting. "I thought you might like some fruit." He handed her the basket, and she looked up, surprised by his gesture. "Oh, thank you, Abby. I wasn't expecting." I didn't know you were coming," Onion Eye said, feeling a little embarrassed. She had not yet gotten used to his visits and hadn't prepared herself for the possibility of an actual conversation with him. Abby chuckled softly, sitting down next to her. "I like to surprise people," he said, "especially when they least expect it." "So, how are you today?" Onion Eye took a deep breath. There was no easy way to answer. "I'm trying to adjust," she said cautiously, unsure of how much she could share with him. She still wasn't certain about where she stood with Abby, or what his intentions were. Could he really accept her, all of her? Abby seemed to understand her hesitation. He didn't push her. Instead, he sat quietly beside her, picking up a mango from the basket and peeling it slowly. "I know it's not easy, Onion Eye," Abby said after a while, looking out at the village. "Starting over in a new place, trying to fit into a new life. But I've seen something in you, something special. You've got strength, even if you don't realize it yet." Onion Eye was silent for a moment, her eyes drifting to the ground. She had never considered herself strong. She had spent so much time hiding, so much time pretending to be someone she wasn't, that she forgot what it felt like to truly embrace who she was. "Why do you keep coming back, Abby?" Onion Eye finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to be here. You've helped me more than enough. Why do you stay?" Abby looked at her, his eyes soft yet filled with sincerity. "I stay because I see the real you, Onion Eye," he said, his voice steady. I see someone who deserves happiness, someone who deserves to be loved and accepted. And I think you deserve the chance to live your life the way you want to. Onion felt her heart flutter in her chest. For the first time in a long while, someone other than Auntie Alma was seeing her for who she truly was, not the mask she wore to protect herself. Abby's words hung in the air between them, and Onion couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope rising within her. Could it be possible? Could someone like Abby truly see her, understand her, and still care? Just then, Auntie Alma appeared in the doorway, looking at them with a raised eyebrow. You two seem to be getting along well, she said, her voice laced with a teasing tone. I hope you're not keeping Onion up too late with your talks, Abby. Abby smiled and stood up to greet Auntie Alma. No, Auntie, just a little chat. We were discussing life in O'Keen. Auntie Alma raised an eyebrow. Life in O'Keen, eh? Well, I hope that chat includes learning to pick up the pace and help around here. She smiled as she ruffled Onion hair. Now, Abby, you should come inside. I've got some extra yam and soup for dinner. Abby glanced at Onion and then back at Auntie Alma. I'd be honored, Auntie. If I can stay for dinner, I'd be more than happy to. As they walked inside, Onion's heart felt lighter. Abby's presence had an effect on her that she hadn't expected. Maybe, just maybe, there was a future for her in O'Keen after all. A future where she could be herself, where she could live without the heavy burden of secrecy. The next few days passed in a blur of normalcy. Abby visited Auntie Alma's house often, helping around the house, carrying firewood, and sometimes even helping Auntie Alma prepare meals. Onion continued to keep her distance, unsure if she was ready to trust Abby completely. But each time they spoke, the connection between them grew stronger. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, Abby invited Onion for a walk along the path leading to the village. The air was crisp, and the evening breeze tugged at their clothes as they walked side by side. Onion, Abby began, his voice suddenly serious, I have to ask you something. I can see that you've been carrying something with you for a long time. Something heavy. And I want you to know, whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone. Onion's heart skipped a beat. She had not expected him to address the very thing she had tried so hard to keep hidden. She stopped walking and turned to face him, her mind racing. I don't know what you mean, she said, trying to play it off. Abby's eyes softened as he stepped closer. I know there's more to you than you've shown. And I think it's time that you share it with me. Whatever it is, Onion, I want you to know you can trust me. Onion swallowed hard. The fear she had been carrying for so long bubbled up inside her, threatening to spill over. I'm not like other girls, she said, her voice trembling. I was born with both male and female parts. She felt a wave of shame wash over her, but Abby simply listened, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, there was only silence. Onion couldn't look him in the eye. She was terrified of what he might think, terrified of the rejection she feared would follow. Finally, Abby spoke, his voice gentle. Onion, I don't care about that. I care about who you are. And if you're willing to share this part of you with me, then I'll be here, no matter what." Onion Eye looked up, meeting his gaze for the first time. There was no judgment in his eyes, only acceptance and care. And in that moment, Onion Eye realized something she hadn't before: she didn't need to hide. She didn't need to be ashamed. Abby had already accepted her for who she was. After that pivotal conversation, Onion Eye's heart felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the need to hide who she truly was. Abby had proven that he could accept her, all of her, without judgment. But even so, a small part of her remained cautious. Could this truly be the beginning of something real? Could she trust herself enough to build a future with someone who had shown her such kindness? The next few days were filled with a quiet optimism. Abby continued to visit Auntie Alma's house, and his presence became a comfort to Onion Eye. They would sit together, talking about everything and nothing at all, letting the hours pass as they grew more and more familiar with each other. There was no rushing, no pressure, just the feeling of two people connecting in a way that felt easy and natural. One evening, as the sky turned from gold to deep purple, Abby and Onion Eye sat outside by the garden. The sound of crickets filled the air, and the soft glow of lanterns cast long shadows on the ground. "Auntie Alma has been encouraging me to find work in O'Keen," Onion Eye said, her voice hesitant. "She thinks it's time for me to stop hiding here in the village." Abby, who had been quietly watching the stars, turned to look at her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, Onion Eye, I think that's a good idea. You deserve more than to be hidden away. You deserve to be free, to live your life fully." Onion Eye smiled faintly, but her thoughts were clouded with doubt. "But what if the world isn't ready to accept me? What if people reject me when they find out the truth?" Abby's gaze softened, and he reached over to gently take her hand. "You won't be alone, Onion Eye. I'll be with you every step of the way. And when the world sees you for who you are, they'll understand. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself anymore." Onion Eye felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. The fear she had lived with for so long seemed to lose its hold on her, just a little. Abby's confidence in her gave her the courage to begin thinking about a future where she could truly live as herself, without constantly looking over her shoulder, afraid of the consequences. Later that evening, Auntie Alma joined them outside, her voice carrying the wisdom of years of experience. "I've been listening to you too," she said, sitting down beside them. "And I think it's time for you, Onion Eye, to start living your life the way you want to. You've carried too many secrets for too long. It's time to face the world, and if you're going to do that, you'll need to trust in yourself." Onion Eye turned to Auntie Alma, a mixture of gratitude and apprehension in her eyes. "But Auntie, I'm scared. What if it all falls apart?" Auntie Alma chuckled softly, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Fear is normal. It's what keeps us alive. But don't let it rule your life. Let it be the fire that pushes you forward, not the wall that holds you back." Abby nodded, his hands still holding Onion Eye's. "Together, we can face anything, Onion Eye. You're not alone in this." Onion Eye felt a rush of emotions, love, fear, hope, colliding within her. this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about building something new, something that would help her heal and move forward. A week later, Onyinye made a decision that would change her life forever. With Abby's unwavering support and Auntie Alma's encouragement, she sent word to her parents, telling them she was ready to return to Okene. She had decided to embrace her future with honesty and open arms. When she finally arrived in Okene, the change in her was palpable. It wasn't just the new clothes she wore or the way she held herself, it was the confidence that radiated from her, the strength she had finally found within herself. It was the first step in reclaiming her life. Abby was there every step of the way, offering his help as she started looking for work and a place of her own. Together, they scouted different areas of the city, and with each passing day, Onyinye felt the weight of her past begin to lift. "Do you think it will be hard?" Onyinye asked one evening, sitting with Abby outside a small cafe. The bustling sounds of the city surrounded them, but she was focused on the future they were beginning to build. Abby smiled reassuringly. "Life isn't easy, but it's better when you face it head-on. You're stronger than you think, Onyinye. And besides," he added with a grin, "you're not doing this alone." Onyinye chuckled, feeling lighter than she had in years. She had always been scared to face the world, to be seen as herself, but now she knew she wasn't alone. She had Abby and Auntie Alma, people who believed in her, and that made all the difference. Months passed, and Onyinye's life in Okene began to fall into place. She found work at a small boutique, and though the pay wasn't much, it gave her the independence she had longed for. She and Abby continued to grow closer, their bond deepening with every passing day. They spent their evenings together, sometimes with Auntie Alma, sometimes alone, and their conversations never seemed to grow tired. There was always something new to learn about each other, and with each new discovery, their trust in one another strengthened. Eventually, Abby proposed to Onyinye in the most simple yet beautiful way, by taking her back to the same spot where they had first talked about their fears and hopes. As the sun set behind them, Abby took Onyinye's hand, his heart full of love and hope for their future. "Onyinye," he said softly, "I know that life hasn't always been kind to you. But I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how loved you are. Will you marry me?" Onyinye's heart swelled with joy as tears welled up in her eyes. She nodded, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Abby. Yes, I will." As they embraced, Onyinye felt like she had finally found her place in the world. It wasn't a place free from challenges, but it was one where she could be herself, where she could live without fear, and where she could build a future filled with love. As the months passed in Okene, Onyinye and Abby's lives unfolded like the pages of a new story, one filled with hope and new beginnings. After the wedding, the days began to blend together in a routine that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. They settled into their new home, a cozy apartment in a quiet part of the city. The walls, though bare, were filled with dreams, dreams of a family, dreams of happiness, and dreams of a life free from fear and shame. Onyinye had finally embraced her identity, no longer hiding or second-guessing herself. With Abby by her side, she took on challenges with newfound strength. She was no longer the fearful girl who had lived in the shadows of her secret. She had become a woman who faced life head-on, unafraid to love herself and to love those who loved her in return. One morning, as the sun began to rise over O'Keen, Abby and Onion stood on the balcony of their apartment, watching the city come to life. The birds chirped, the streets began to fill with people, and the air felt fresh with possibility. "I'm so proud of you, Onion Eye," Abby said softly, his arm around her shoulders. "You've come such a long way." Onion Eye smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart at his words. "I never thought I would be able to get here, you know? I was so afraid that the world would never accept me. But here I am, living the life I always dreamed of." Abby squeezed her hand. "You deserve everything good that comes your way. And more." Onion Eye turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I don't think I could have done it without you. You showed me that I could be loved, even with all my fears and my past. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Abby smiled, his eyes softening. "That's what love is, Onion Eye. Believing in each other, even when the world seems to be against us. We lift each other up, and we keep going forward together." As the days passed, Onion Eye continued to work at the boutique, slowly building a reputation for herself as a skilled and reliable worker. She had earned the respect of her colleagues, and her boss admired her dedication. With Abby's support, she also started taking evening classes to improve her business skills. The once hesitant and fearful girl was now a woman determined to build a future for herself, her family, and their dreams. Abby, too, was flourishing in his own career, and soon he began working on expanding his own business. Together, they worked late into the nights, making plans for the future, supporting one another in every step. The bond between them deepened, strengthened by their shared experiences, and soon they began to dream of starting their own family. "I think it's time, don't you?" Abby asked one evening, as they sat at the kitchen table, papers and plans scattered around them. Onion Eye looked up, meeting his gaze. "Time for what?" "To start trying for a family," he said, his voice gentle. "We've built this life together. And now, I want us to build it even further." Onion Eye's heart fluttered at the thought of having a child with Abby. It had always been something she dreamed of but never thought would be possible. She was nervous, of course. What if she couldn't carry a child? What if things didn't go as planned? But Abby's confidence was reassuring, and she trusted him with everything she had. "You're right," Onion Eye said, her voice steady but filled with hope. "I think it's time." Months passed as the couple tried for a baby. The journey was filled with moments of uncertainty, but also joy. Abby remained by Onion Eye's side through every doctor's visit, every test, every hopeful moment. And finally, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, Onion Eye discovered that she was pregnant. When she told Abby the news, his face lit up with joy and disbelief. They hugged each other tightly, overwhelmed by the miracle they had created together. For Onion Eye, it felt like the final chapter of her story was about to be written, and it was one of love, fulfillment, and hope for the future. The pregnancy wasn't without its challenges, but Onion Eye carried the baby with determination and grace. Her heart swelled with love for the tiny life growing inside her, and Abby was there every step of the way, supporting her and making sure she was comfortable. After months of anticipation, the day finally came. Onion Eye gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. The joy that filled the room was indescribable. It was the beginning of a new chapter for their family, one that was full of endless possibilities. As Onyinye held her baby in her arms, she looked up at Abby, her heart filled with gratitude and love. "We did it," she whispered, tears of joy in her eyes. Abby smiled, his heart full. "Yes, we did. And now, we get to show him the world we've built. A world full of love." As the years passed, Onyinye and Abby's family grew. They welcomed more children, and their home became filled with laughter, love, and the warmth of a life well lived. Onyinye had found peace, not just with herself, but with the world around her. She had come to realize that acceptance doesn't just come from others, it starts with accepting yourself. The journey had not been easy. It had been filled with trials, fears, and moments of doubt. But in the end, Onyinye had learned that true happiness comes from within. When you embrace who you are, and when you surround yourself with love and understanding, the world becomes a better place. Onyinye's story became a beacon of hope to others who had struggled with their own identities, showing them that it's never too late to start over, to be true to yourself, and to build a life full of love. The story of Onyinye teaches us several important lessons. First, it reminds us that no matter the difficulties we face, we have the power to change our lives. Second, it teaches us the importance of self-acceptance and the courage to be true to ourselves. Finally, it reminds us that love, when it is real and unconditional, has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. As Onyinye embarked on her journey with Abby, she learned that acceptance begins with oneself. And with the right support, there is nothing we cannot overcome. Hello tribe, hope we enjoyed today's story. Please kindly put what you've learned in the comments section. Please remember to hit the like button, share this to your friends and family, as well as subscribe to see you on the next one.